collaboration solution in today's workforce. Please welcome from Rackspace, Seburn Wilson.
Well, thanks for showing up for the last breakout session, and hopefully you guys can hang around for the reception afterwards and have a free drink on Rackspace. So I'm here to talk to you about mobility concerns for productivity and collaboration solutions in today's workforce. So that's one way of saying, all these cool devices we have today with the mobile apps and, the concerns that those should generate. If you're not concerned about it, you probably should be. And some ways that you can secure your network if you're not doing it today. So, but I have an agenda that I want, to talk a little bit about myself, give you some of my background, and then I want to jump into the mobile world today. The mobile world today, I'm actually going to do a evolution of mobile, go back about 3 decades, just kind of walk through that. I think it's kind of fun to look, where we came from to where we are today. So I'll spend a little bit of time on that. And then I want to talk about mobility concerns that exist, and this is based on conversations I have with customers, or I've, working with customers over the years. I've been prior to Rackspace and consulting. I used to work for AT&T. And just the concerns that, that exist out there. And then I want to talk about mobile device management options. So some of the options that exist in the market to address some of those concerns, and again, most people are using at least mobile email today, and most likely are using other apps. There's millions of apps that exist in the App Store, but only a subset of those are actually used for corporate applications. And then we're going to talk about developing your MDM strategy. So again, most of you probably already have some level of mobile device management, whether it's using ActiveSync and Microsoft Exchange. So there's some capability there, but you may need to revisit that and figure out how do you shore up, your MDM strategy. And I'll just give you a high-level overview of a strategy you can take to go through that process. And then at the end, I do want to talk to you a little bit about Managed Cloud and Cloud Office at Rackspace. So my name, he already mentioned or introduced me. I'm Seburn Wilson. I'm a senior manager within Cloud Office. So we provide application management for a lot of collaboration tools that a lot of people are familiar with. So SharePoint, Exchange, Skype for Business, and other email apps as well. And so that's the team I'm part of. And for those of you who are existing customers, you may not know that we offer those capabilities. So I do want to, take that time to plug my team and the practice area I'm in. So a little bit about myself. I've been in the technology industry for about 18 years. 12 years of that was spent in consulting. So I did a lot of consulting work in the IT industry, which allowed me to work with a lot of different industry verticals, a lot of different customers. I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly of the way of doing things in technology. 2 of the projects that are notable that I worked on that are somewhat relevant to this topic were I did 140,000 seat unified communications deployment for a large oil and gas company. So large global, a lot of legal and regulatory, politics, everything that goes along with huge deployment. And I had another 180,000 seat unified communications deployment for another large global customer. So there's a lot of lessons learned from those types of projects that you learn from mistakes you may make or scar tissue that you obtain from those types of projects. And the reason why that's important when we talk about Rackspace, we have thousands of people that are bringing expertise when we partner with customers. I have my expertise, I have other people who have their own unique experience with different industry verticals, and that becomes an extension of your IT as well. So we can give you advice on things you should do or shouldn't do just based on things we've done in the past. So the mobile world today, again, I'm going to walk you through some of the past. It's pretty fun to look at where we came from. So again, I'll go back about 3 decades. I don't know which people are old enough to remember this phone, the brick phone. It could also serve as a blunt object, I think, if you need a self-defense weapon. Anyway, so this actually became, in the US, first mobile network came out in 1983. Japan, I think, actually had a mobile network in 1979. This device was invented in 1973, but there was no infrastructure to actually support it. All right, who had a pager in their career? They still exist. I mean, in hospitals and other places, so they still exist. I had a pager. This was my first cell phone. I thought it was the coolest phone ever. I thought I was the coolest guy ever when I got it. So who had a StarTAC? Anybody have a StarTAC? Anybody old enough for that? Cool. All right, personal digital assistants. And where I'm going with this, I'm showing all these devices that exist over time, and you think about where devices we have today. All right, so who had a PDA? All right, that didn't go back the way I expected. Who had the pager, the flip phone, and the PDA? You're a geek. All right, I want to give Nokia some love too. Obviously I'm not going to cover every device that ever existed, just kind of a subset, snapshot. They're a major player in the mobile space, so I want to give them a little love. I never owned this phone myself. So that's in 1998, Then BlackBerry came on the scene with their first wireless email client. This wasn't a phone device, but it was a wireless email client. Not everybody had one of these. This was for the important people in the company that had, a BlackBerry device. And at the same time, obviously, the BES server. So BlackBerry Enterprise Server was what I would consider one of the first MDM platforms, even though that term didn't exist back then. And it came out in 1999. Then we had a compact iPad, another personal digital assistant with color screen. I had one of these too. And then iPod. I know it's a digital music player, but again, all these devices that existed over time, we can do all of this on our mobile devices today. And the BlackBerry came out, this was 2002 when they came out with an actual voice-enabled device and also wireless email client. Another Nokia phone. I had a lot of friends that had this phone. I didn't have it either, but they seemed to like it. Then in 2002, Microsoft came out with AirSync at the time. It was basically Active Sync. That's when they got into the mobile space as well for wireless email. Palm Treo, this was another phone I owned. I love this phone. I actually found it in my attic about a month ago. I don't know why I have it still, because I usually recycle electronics, so I still have this device. It actually was a PDA/phone, so it's still a very cool device. Apple iTunes launched in 2003. So again, not an app store per se, but predecessor, to an app store. Then Razer, this sweet flip phone. Anybody still own a flip phone? And willing to admit it? All right, I'm trying to cover different iOSs that exist, so Windows devices, Symbian, we'll get into Apple, of course, Android. So this is another smartphone that existed. 2007, this was the game changer. Apple comes out with their iPhone on the Edge network. So this is the second generation network device. And then 2008, both Apple and Google launched their app stores. And now we have, in 2010, both Samsung and the iPad, or Apple came out with their first tablets. And I got Microsoft on here as well because although they had the Surface device, the Surface Pro is a PC tablet form factor with PC hardware in it, so you can run full-blown Windows devices. But again, these are game-changing devices. And of course, now we have our phablet. So too big to be a phone, too small to be considered a tablet, but somewhere in between. All right, anybody feeling nostalgic? Taking a little walk down memory lane. So just some stats we could talk about. A third of employees are completely mobile, so they literally don't go into an office. They're always on the road. They're always out and about. I don't know if anybody in here fits into that category. I had times in my career where I was traveling a lot, but I still wasn't, always out of the office. 4 out of 5 at least spend at least some time out of the office. I fall into this category today. I either work from home, work in the office, or I'm traveling. We're all here today, so it's kind of a mobile activity. And half of employees say they're expected to get their work done no matter where they are. Anybody here fit that category? It's not 50%, so that's either it's not a good sample or that stat's wrong. So office productivity tools are the gateway, to with these mobile devices and accessing corporate information. They really do allow us to be collaborative and productive at any time of the day. And here's a snapshot of some of the mobile apps. Again, there's millions of apps in app stores, but a lot of those are fun apps. People do it for enjoyment, trivia apps, whatever. But I wanted to highlight some of the like CRM applications, Microsoft Dynamics and Salesforce, online storage, cloud-based storage, Dropbox, Box, Google Drive, OneDrive. And I'm pointing these out because they have the ability to contain corporate information, may end up getting synced up to the cloud, and it's something you should be worried about. When you talk about data leakage, things of that nature. And then Office Mobile, and then SaaS-based solutions, again, Office 365, Google Apps for Work. And then we have HR and expense management, Concur and Workday. So again, just a subset of some of the applications out there. And I have email in here. Really email, I think, drove mobile device development because it started out again with BlackBerry and Active Sync. And those were really the first apps that were available on mobile devices beyond just being a voice phone. So all these great apps, all these awesome devices, they allow us to be productive anywhere, anytime, on almost any device. But there's concerns. You got to be concerned about mobility and the security risk it may create. And keeping things up to date, policies, things are always evolving. So how do you manage that without, to allow employees to be productive and get things done, but reducing the risk to your company. You think about before it was, keeping your servers and your desktops and PCs, with antivirus and firewalls and all that kind of stuff. Now that footprint has just exploded with these mobile devices. So just another snapshot. These are older stats, so it's probably up over 3 million between the two. And a lot of those apps are duplicated between both app stores. One vendor will make the same app for Android and Apple. But, there's a ton of apps out there. And again, a lot of those are for personal enjoyment, not necessarily corporate enterprise types apps. So some of today's top concerns, again, this was with me being with customers or just experience over time. When you're looking at SaaS-based solutions, even if it's on-prem or within the same corporation, hardly any of them have the same identity store. Some depend on Active Directory, some may depend on some open source LDAP, or some SQL database or MySQL database on the back end that's holding those identities. So identity management, how do you keep things in sync and manage identities in a hire fire scenario when people are coming on board or leaving the company? BYD, so if companies aren't doing bring your own device today, they're exploring it, but that creates some concerns around private data versus corporate data. How do you manage the two and isolate that data, from, again, the customers or the end users, their own personal data in a BYD scenario versus corporate data on that device. The data protection, I talked about cloud-based storage and, email. How do you protect that data? If someone loses their device, ensuring that it's not going to be compromised, or you're not going to have a data leakage scenario. And then policy enforcement. Again, with all these devices, if you have thousands of users with thousands of mobile devices, how do you enforce policies consistently? The ability to provide some type of self-service capability, a portal, web-based interface so they can enroll their devices, so you can offload some of that work to the end user without having to have an IT person enrolling devices all day long, enrolling or unenrolling. And then mobile application management. So let's say you develop your own custom in-house applications, mobile app, and you want to be able to manage that on these devices. Again, how are you going to do that? What tool sets can you use to ensure that you're able to consistently deploy and stay to these users and make those applications available? And I have identity management and I have authentication authorization. Those are very tightly integrated. It's managing the identity is one thing, but also the authentication authorization component. How do you manage that with all these SaaS-based solutions, different identity stores? And ultimately monitoring when there is a potential compromise. For example, someone logs in from a device in China and using someone's credentials, it's a US-based employee, maybe that guy happened to travel over there, so it ends up not being an issue, but at the end of the day, you want to be alerted and be able to monitor that kind of stuff so you can look for compromised credentials. And then malware protection. How do you make sure devices have appropriate malware protection and, are again, compliant? So I had this sidebar here with a alarming new way to steal passwords. So I got this off of Yahoo, but it was actually a Syracuse University research that hackers can guess pins by analyzing video of people tapping on their phones. Again, it's just to point out people are getting pretty crafty with ways to get people's passwords, pins. I always used to think hackers, 10 years ago, was the nerdy guy sitting in his mama's basement, with nothing better to do. But again, these are, smart people that, are looking at new ways to be creative and steal information. So I want to look at a high-level 50,000-foot view of some of your options you have for mobile device management. So if you're not aware, most of the mobile device or carriers like AT&T, Verizon, Sprint, they offer some mobile device solutions, and it doesn't always have to be an AT&T device or Verizon device. They even can manage BYOD scenarios, so they have software that you can leverage to actually manage your mobile devices. So you could have your employee might have a BYOD scenario where they have a Verizon phone, and you go to AT&T, they can actually offer a mobile device management solution for BYOD. So those are some options. The other high-level options or other options to consider are on-premise, so either in your own data center or using a managed co-location provider like Rackspace. So VMware AirWatch, Citrix Zen Mobile, good technology. And I point out Exchange Active Sync and Link mobile policies. That would be, I want to call it the poor man's version, but you do have some level of mobile device management that you can achieve with Exchange Active Sync and Link, and a lot of people use those today. So I did want to highlight those. Those are something we actually do today for customers. So when I talk about Rackspace Cloud Office, we have dedicated Exchange, dedicated Link, and it's now been rebranded to Skype for Business. we have offerings around that where we can actually implement policies for mobile devices. And then the other solutions that are cloud-based, and this is not an all-inclusive list. I mean, there's tons of other products out there. Again, I'm just taking a snapshot. So on the cloud-based options are O365 mobile device management. So any of the commercial plans, like business or enterprise or government education, they all have mobile device management included. So if you own those subscriptions, you actually have that available to you if you're consuming O365 today. And basically what it is, there's a product called Microsoft Intune, so it's a light version of that, doesn't have all the feature set, and it gives you more capabilities in Exchange ActiveSync. And I'll talk a little bit more about it in a second. And then another option is advanced mobile device management using Enterprise Mobility Suite. That's another suite of tools from Microsoft, and I'll highlight those as well in a few slides. Almost hardly any of these devices will address every concern I talked about. Identity management, mobile application management. It usually is going to take a suite of tools to actually address those concerns, not like one product that is a silver bullet for everything. So the mobile device management capabilities in O365. So it has the ability to perform conditional access. You can do device management. You have selective wipe. So those products I had on the previous screen, pretty much all of them have the ability to call it containerize corporate data. So when you're accessing corporate data, it actually, it's not like a Linux container, but it can isolate the corporate data from private user data to BYOD scenario. So it allows you to do things like selective wipe. So if you feel the device has been compromised, you can actually wipe off the corporate data without resetting or reformatting the entire device, which is beneficial in a BYD scenario. Compliance enforcement, again, you may find out there's a vulnerability on a certain mobile OS and decide you don't want those devices connecting to your network anymore. So you can enforce, different policies. And then security, things like, PIN length, password history, password uniqueness, all those types of things. You can also use it to perform that activity as well. The Enterprise Mobility Suite, again, it's a suite of tools that when you take them all together, they can address almost all the concerns I mentioned on the previous slides. Yeah, so Azure Active Directory Premium allows you to do identity management, and Azure Rights Management Service allows you to do data loss prevention, allows you to basically can tag documents with metadata so that even if someone were to send an email to someone outside the company, if they tried to open that attachment, if they didn't have the appropriate rights, they wouldn't even be able to open it. Same thing applies for data on cloud-based storage as well. It tags it, so no matter where that data resides, if the person that tries to access it doesn't have the right credentials or right access, they wouldn't be able to open the document. And then Microsoft Intune is their cloud-based mobile device management solution. And again, it takes what you can do in O365 and goes beyond that. So O365, that selective wipe I mentioned, you can only wipe data that's O365 data. So it doesn't, if it's a corporate file server or data that's not being, it could be corporate data, but if it's not in O365, it actually isn't going to wipe it. So Intune will allow you to do selective wipe, and it will actually identify corporate data regardless whether it's in O365 or is data that came from the on-premise corporate applications. Another thing to mention on Azure Active Directory Premium, the way Microsoft has set up their Azure service is Azure Active Directory Premium is actually federated with over 2,000 SaaS providers today. So if you have your own Active Directory on-prem and you set up Azure Active Directory Premium and actually synchronize, you can have single sign-on scenario not only with Azure services or O365, but things like Salesforce, Workday, Concur, all of them are federated with that identity service. So that opens the door to have, again, a single set of credentials and access other SaaS-based solutions using that same set of credentials. So developing your mobile strategy. I mentioned a lot of people have some level of mobile device management defined, or they have some loosely defined policies around it. At the end of the day, you want to have a mobility roadmap. You need to sit down and first define your requirements. What are your requirements for mobile device management and securing the mobile workforce? And then you need to understand your current MDM posture. So again, do you have policies defined, or is it pretty Wild West out there? People can just log into anything and do whatever they want. So you need to understand your current state. And you need to also understand, that's the time to look at, do you have the in-house expertise if you're going to go down this path, or is it something do you want to partner with somebody who may have the expertise? and outsource that capability. Again, I mentioned, the providers that, the mobile providers out there that have mobile device management solutions. So you just need to understand, what your current state is, and if you have the in-house expertise to do it. Another thing you need to understand, are there any legal and regulatory? One good example I read about is scenarios where a company may have union workers who have set work hours. And, if they have a mobile device and they're now checking email outside of their work hours, is that going to cause some kind of conflict or create an issue? So that's just one example of things you need to be aware of, depending on your organization and legal and regulatory requirements. Then once you define your requirements and you have your discovery, you need to do that gap analysis. Again, what do you need to remediate to address the gaps you've identified between what the required end state is and what your current state is? And from that, then you can design that BYOD and company-owned device MDM solution. And at that point, you're going to determine, is it something you're going to do in-house? Which product's the best fit? If you're a VMware shop and you're comfortable with VMware, you might want VMware AirWatch. And once you've done the design, then you define a roadmap with phases for a mobile device management rollout. So phase one, may be identity management. If you want to get single sign-on and get your identity management stuff in order, phase one would probably be a mobile identity management, get that rolled out. Phase two, do a proof of concept with a subset of users, and ultimately a pilot, and then you can do full rollout, getting device enrolled and getting users under a single mobile device management solution. So I mentioned I want to tell you a little bit about Cloud Office at Rackspace. So so in our room right now, how many are existing customers? If you don't mind raising your hand. Okay. How many are, just here to check us out and hear what we got to say? All right. So for existing customers, if you didn't know, we have, Cloud Office is a practice area within Rackspace, and we offer fanatical support for O365, Google Apps for Work, and I have a slide a little bit later. I'll talk more about that. And then we have offerings around Exchange, SharePoint, and Skype for Business, and we also have Rackspace email. So all the collaboration tools a lot of companies need. We have pretty large install base of Exchange, for example. We have over 500,000 Exchange mailbox we host today. All these, the Exchange, SharePoint, and Skype for Business, we have multi-tenant and dedicated offerings as well. Dedicated just means single tenant. It's not shared with any other company. It's, just for you. So we have the ability to do varying clouds for varying needs. So when I talk about Exchange, Skype for Business, SharePoint, we have the ability to mix and match. So I come from the Skype world, Skype for Business, and sometimes if there's a large enough user base, because there's a lot of voice traffic and transcoding that can take place, I may want dedicated servers for a certain customer if they're large enough, because there's a lot of transcoding that may take place, and I don't want performance or degradation or just a bad user experience. So, but not all the roles have to be, on dedicated servers. So I have the ability to say, all right, I want some virtualized roles, but then I want bare metal for, the roles that do all the transcoding. So we end up with this hybrid scenario. So we can come up with the best of breed, best architecture that meets, budgetary requirements, and just, again, it doesn't all have to be bare metal, it doesn't all have to be private cloud, it can be a mixture of those. So that's the flexibility we bring to the table. And I think most of you know what managed cloud is. Again, it's not just pure infrastructure as a service. We provide the management on top of that, our fanatical support. We've been doing this for 15 years. We're pretty good at it. So growing the managed cloud up the stack. So, managed cloud, again, is more of the infrastructure. We manage that infrastructure for you. But we also have expertise for application management. So SharePoint, Exchange, Skype for Business, our Rackspace email, we have the ability to manage those applications for customers. And we have fairly large install base of customers that come to us. They may even have, the in-house expertise, but it's not strategic to their business. So they come to us saying, look, I want you to handle the care and feeding of the application and help us with architecture questions when we have problems. If there's a critical outage, we know we can rely on you to call you to resolve it. But again, they can leverage those tools for the collaboration, what they were meant to do, be used for, and not worry about managing them on a day-to-day basis. So I wanted to talk a little more about O365 and Google Apps for Work. So back in April, we had general availability of Google Apps for Work. What we refer to as up the stack and out of the rack. So we're actually providing fanatical support for applications that don't even live in our data center. And then we just launched in May of this year, Office 365 fanatical support and advisory services. So a lot of customers, I don't want to insult anybody in this room, but you think of SaaS-based solutions, even though someone else is hosting that infrastructure and you have this these self-service portals, they don't manage themselves. Mailboxes don't create themselves. They don't just automatically, resolve troubleshooting issues. So, it's great to go consume those services or get subscriptions, but at the end of the day, if you don't have the right resources internally to manage it, you're not really getting the real value out of it. So we've seen a lot of customers coming to us and say, I love O365, but the support I get from Microsoft is inadequate. And so we've layered that on top of there, and it's actually doing really well. So to wrap this up, just to reiterate, managed cloud and fanatical support for MDM. I talked about some of those other platforms, VMware, AirWatch, good technologies, and basically we don't have the expertise on those applications per se, but for those that don't want to be in the data center business, we can still offer you a managed cloud and offload, a lot of that work and still deploy the solutions within Rackspace and get an MDM solution. And the other option is Rackspace Fanatical Support for O365 mobile device management. So again, we have our new Fanatical Support for O365. So for the customers where that's a good fit, the capabilities of that MDM platform are adequate for your company. We can help you deploy that, manage it, understand how to implement policies, things of that nature. So, just consider us. Again, I don't want this to be a complete infomercial for Rackspace, but I do want y'all to know that that's something we can help customers with. So that's basically the end of my presentation, but I want to open up for Q&A if anybody has any questions. You're going to give me a question that I don't know the answer to, but we have some people here at Cloud Office table. We can probably walk back there and ask them. I think those guys can answer that for you. So the question was, does email support HIPAA compliance? And I don't have an answer, but we'll find out. Yes, sir. So the question was, are there any other smaller players that are up and coming in the mobile device management space? I haven't done a ton of research to see, I've heard of as a mobile iron, that sounds familiar, but I haven't done a lot of research, to be honest with you, to see, what the landscape looks like and all the players in the space. I will say there's a lot more, obviously, than I had on that list. I've picked some of the bigger brands that people are familiar with, but there are definitely other players out there, and there could be some small shops that are doing some really incredible stuff, but I don't know off the top of my head. Anyone else? Yep.
What's your target market for your MDM solutions? Is it small to medium size or enterprise?
So for the O365, that's probably a better fit for SMB, small to medium business. When I talk about VMware AirWatch, again, that's not an area we have expertise for the actual MDM solution, but that could be an enterprise customer. Again, we define what that architecture needs to look like or work with the customer. If it ends up being 10 servers to support it or whatever it was required, we could definitely do, an enterprise deployment. Anything else? Nope. Who's hanging around for happy hour? Me too. All right. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks a lot, Seburn. And coming up right here in this room, the final session in just a few minutes at 5 o'clock, Boogie Wittenberg, VP or Senior VP of Rackspace, talking about life is better with a coach and wrapping up the day in just about 5 minutes.